I'd say Four Great Women and a Manicure was 50% good, 50% kind of boring. This is the 20th episode of the 20th season of The Simpsons, directed by Raymond S. Persi, and Lisa and Marge go to get manicures, and Marge decides to tell Lisa stories about strong women, and Lisa in return does the same, and we have 4 stories, one about Elizabeth I, which I thought was okay. I didn't mind it. I thought we had some good costumes for the characters that incorporated various members of Springfield in some pretty decent roles, and I quite liked it. The second one is Lisa tells the story of Snow White, and it's very Disneyfied. And there is a version of Hi Ho, but the lyrics are Ho Hi, and I loved it. And the dwarfs all have different names apart from Doc, who is Dr. Hibbert, which it amused me to no end. I liked it. It was a nice, fun interpretation of Snow White with some very obvious Disney angles. That one I enjoyed as well. And then the final 2 stories were really dull. The third story, but the first of the 2 dull ones, could have been interesting. It's the story of Macbeth, but it's actually a production of Macbeth, with Lady Macbeth. Marge is married to Homer, who is trying to get a decent part in the play, and things don't go according to plan. And yeah, there are obvious similarities, comparisons. I didn't really care for it. I didn't think it was interesting. It would have just been better if they just did a straight up story of Lady Macbeth and Macbeth. So it was a bit repetitive and just not good. And the 4th story was just so boring. It's based on The Fountainhead, and it's about Maggie growing up, or being a toddler who's great at building blocks and then growing up to become an architect, and it just ended so abruptly, and it wasn't funny, and it wasn't good, and it wasn't interesting. So the first half of this episode was really good, and I thought this is really enjoyable. They needed better stories for the second 2. The concept is great, but the 2 stories for the second half were just so dull. Not a good way to tell those stories, not interesting at all. And I'm not alone in these views, at least the overall sentiment, because it has 6.4 out of 10 on IMDb. That's across 1.3 thousand reviews and ratings, so it's not exactly the majority's favourite episode. But actually, the first 2 stories, Snow White and Elizabeth I, I rather liked. I thought it worked quite well, and then it let itself down. So, needless to say, this isn't my favourite episode. We do have Jodie Foster. Jodie Foster voices Maggie, not as a baby. Well, she is a baby, but it's not a baby's voice. So that was nice. If I have to find something positive about the second half, Jodie Foster can make anything terrible a little less terrible. But other than that, the second half was just completely boring. But the first half, I actually rather liked.